back in 2004, I went to Cambodia, and honestly, actually, 2003 is when I was kind of looking to go teach English in China, because that's what everybody did. If you remember back 2002, 2003, everybody went to teach English in China, and I have a background in teaching, and so it seemed like the natural things to do. And so I was looking at different places. To make a really long story short, I had someone who asked me to go to Cambodia with them instead, and I was like, sure, where's that? I'd never heard of it before, and so I was like, I'll go there. And it worked out really well because after 5.5 years of being in Cambodia, my now husband and I, who is from Cambodia, actually I met him after being there about 6 months. We're friends, we're good friends, we're best friends, now we're more than friends. And one day we literally sat down after a 2.5 hour long conversation and decided to get married. So you can imagine my parents loved that. But anyway, so we've been married for almost 15 years now, and we went back to Cambodia in January 2014. And actually, the funny thing is that the day I left was January 17th, 2004, for my first time to go to Cambodia. And the day we left to go back to Cambodia for the first time as a married couple was January 17th, 2014. So exactly 10 years later, we went back to Cambodia. And honestly, when we went there, it wasn't a shot in the dark. We knew we were moving to Siem Reap, but I didn't know necessarily. We knew we wanted to work with children, but I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. We were moving to an area that we really didn't know anything about. And so we got there, and first thing you got to do when you get there is look for a house, right? You got to have a place to live. And so we were looking for a house, and we went to this one place, and it was just kind of in a rice field. There weren't any kids around because we wanted to find a place that we could actually do ministry in our village. And I'm going to talk fast this morning, so I know I'm talking fast, but I got to fit 10 years into like 30 minutes, right? And so I'm going to go fast. And so we were looking for a house, and we looked at like 2 or 3 different houses, and the guy took us to this house that was like crazy expensive. I was like, no, can't do that. And then we got to this other house, and we got to the area, and there were kids running around, and they were dirty, they were barefooted, they were cursing, and we're like, this is perfect. This is where we need to be. And we looked at the house, and of course, God knows my limits, and he knows my limit is rats. And so God did not let me know that there were rats in that house until after we moved in, and it was too late, and we had signed a contract for a year. And so we moved into this wonderful rat house. They stayed in the ceiling most of the time. I had my dog at the time, and so he took care of a lot of rats. My cat took care of the geckos that lived in the house. But anyway, so we began just being there and trying to reach out. And there's a lot of screaming. There was a lot of abuse that was happening in the area and with the kids. There was a lot of alcoholism. There were times that I would hear children screaming, and because they're being beat by alcoholic parents, and I would step right outside and I would give the death stare, like, you better stop now, and they would stop. It was just a really bad situation. But this is where we wanted to be. This is what we wanted to live among so that we can make a difference in this area. And so we first moved in there, obviously I look different. My husband's Cambodian, so he fits in. Actually, people think he's from the Philippines for some reason. But anyway, he's fits in just fine with them, but I stick out like a sore thumb. And so the first game we played was Let's Touch the White Person. And so little Gigi, she is 14 years old now. She was 3, almost 4. She'd actually almost been trafficked a couple times. Someone was trying to kidnap her to traffic her, and we're not going to go into all the details of that right now with kids in here. But she was just this little girl, tiny little thing with the curliest, matted, dirty, lice-filled hair, with a mouth on her like you've never heard, because she learned from her parents. That was what her parents did, and so that was what she did. And she would get real close to me, and she would run away, and the other kids would kind of get a little close, and then she would run away. But Gigi was going to be the brave one. She was going to touch me first, and so she did, and that broke down those walls. And so it was really neat just to see how just the innocence of a child began our ministry. And I always, she has no idea if you've been around our ministry very long or if you've heard of us. Everybody who knows part of our ministry knows who Gigi is, because she is still that rough around the edges. The lice is gone, which is good. She's still rough around the edges and lives a hard life with an alcoholic father. just difficult situations, but she's changing, and God is changing her. But I'll tell you more about that in just a second. But anyway, so we began reaching out to our kids, and this particular family, it was several families altogether, but this particular family was just in the worst situation. The kids would come over and eat because there's no food at home. They would come over, and we began giving out. We had we'll talk about this in a second, but the water filter over here, you see, we had the same one, and so I would filter clean water for the kids, and they would bring over these big old, like a water filter. You turn it upside down, you can push the hot or the cold button. So it was like one of those big bottle things like that, and I would fill these water bottles up for the kids, and they would take them home so they'd have some clean water. But just really bad situation, and we began working with these kids, and eventually, really long story short, we began to find sponsors for these kids to go to school. And it was through that sponsorship program that the kids really began to change. They began to be discipled. Fast forward 10 years, the other day, my husband, who's in Cambodia right now, he left about 6 weeks ago, and we'll be leaving, me and my son, Bohao over there, we'll be leaving a week from tomorrow to head back to Cambodia early in the morning. But he was telling me the other day that there have been some Jehovah's Witnesses. So we have a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons in Cambodia too. And there were some Jehovah's Witnesses that had been coming around. And, Gigi's been going through discipleship and everything for the last 10 years. And they were telling her, they're like, oh, let us come and teach you. And she didn't know who they were. And so they were trying to come in and teach her and tell her. And she's like, no, that's not right. And she would sit there and tell them why this is wrong and what they're believing is wrong. And so it's just so good and so encouraging to hear that she's defending her faith, from this little 3, almost 4-year-old with a sailor's mouth to this child who, still rough around the edges, but God is using her and making her faith stronger. And I believe, there are a couple of these girls, especially that we have in our sponsorship program, I believe they're going to be the leaders. And for me, next year, they're almost done with their school year, but this next year they're going to be graduating from high school. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to be full circle and they come and work for us in our children's program? To me, that would just be like a dream come true. They're the first literate ones in their family. Everyone in their family is illiterate. No one can read or write except for these kids. And so it's just amazing to look back. And, if you had asked me 10 years ago, would you be in Cambodia 10 years later, I'd been like, no, we're going to go for a year, we're going to go back home. But these are the kids that have pulled our hearts so much. So children's ministry is such an important part of our ministry. One of the verses you saw up there was Proverbs 22:6, and it says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And this is really the heart of what we do in so many different ways. Do we have access to these kids every day? Are we their parents? No. Just the other day, I'll just share this in here. I haven't really shared them as much, but the other day, Gigi told me she wanted to be a boy. And I was like, oh, goodness, here we go. And I asked her, I said the other day, in January, and I said, why do you want to be a boy? And she couldn't really tell me. And she said, because my mom is weak. Because all she has seen her whole life is a dad who abuses the mom. And I looked at her and said, do you think I'm weak? No. Then you don't need to be a boy because you can be strong. And it was just that seeing, training her up into what she needs to be. And does she really want to be a boy? No, she doesn't want to be abused by a man. That's what she doesn't want in her heart. And so that's what we want to do. We meet with these kids every week. We go to the different villages and we meet with the kids and we do Bible stories. It's kind of like a VBS, like a weekly VBS. Bible stories, games, songs, and we teach English to some of the kids. We teach English out there too because everybody wants to learn English. And I am fluent in English. And so I am a great English teacher for them. So we go out there and teach English and really just begin building relationships with the kids. And in Buddhism and the Buddhist religion, they don't tell you where you came from. They don't tell you how you were created. And so we start at the beginning with God made you. And it seems like such a basic thing, but it's the truth. They don't know. And my father-in-law, he was a Buddhist monk before, and that was one of the things that he did. He's a pastor now, but he didn't know, where did I come from? And that was one of the things that got his interest in Christianity was, oh, there's a God who made me. So basic for us, so elementary for us, but such a mind-blowing thing for these people. And so we start at the beginning, we tell the stories of Christ, and just really pour into these kids' lives. And so many parents come back and they say, our kids are just different. They behave different. They're nice to us. They're respectful. They listen, and they can't hardly believe because Christ is changing them. Jesus is changing their lives and who they are. So from our first village we were at, sorry, I got to talk faster. From our first village that we were at, we had the opportunity to go to another village. Originally, my father and mother-in-law were working with us in Cambodia. They're in the United States now, but they were working with us in Cambodia, and my father-in-law had this connection to this other village. We originally called it the Faraway Village, but it's no longer far away. It's one of the closer villages. It took us about 2.5 hours to get there down the worst roads ever. It was probably like a 45-minute drive like here, but it took us 2.5 hours because of the roads. And so we went out there, and we had said, we've got some school supplies that Donson and I had brought back from the U.S., and we wanted to give out some school supplies to the kids. And they're like, yeah, come on. We have about 10 kids. So I thought, let's prepare for 20. Well, 25 showed up. Around 25 showed up. Of course, more than we thought. And so we were giving out school supplies to the kids, and we told a Bible story, and we sang some songs and played some games, did our normal thing. And we asked if we can come back the next week, and they're like, sure. Well, one thing I didn't realize at first was that the house of the person that we were meeting at, not in their house, but like their house is here, the big tree is here, and we're meeting around the big tree, he was a witch doctor. And so he was the one who invited us. And so he was our connection out to this village. And because of this connection out to the village, we've been able to go to other villages. And so it was really interesting. He's up here doing his spitting thing and casting spells and stuff, and wherever we're thinking, Jesus loves me. Not Jesus loves me, but they're Cambodian Christian songs, and so it was just such a contrast of what was happening. And did he ever become a believer? No, him and his wife never became believers. But it's just an interesting contrast of, worshiping Satan and we're worshiping Jesus, literally 10 feet apart. And so what I would like to do is just let you see some of our children's ministry in a short video. So children's ministry is the gospel transforming lives. That's what we want. It's going to go one more time. So one of the things that we do also is we do give out noodles at the end of our children's program. And we know that there are kids who come to children's program to get food. And you know what? That's okay. Because you know what they're going to hear? They're going to hear the truth of the gospel. They're going to hear the Bible stories. They're going to learn Christian songs. And then they're going to go back, and we're very strategic in what we do. We send coloring pages with Bible stories on the back. You know where they go? They go home. And so what happens? Parents can read them, or the kids can read them to their parents. And so we're very strategic in little things that we can do. And most recently, in one of our villages, two of our villages, it's been hard. I can sit here and tell you all the good stories and everything, but it's hard. Ministry is hard there. Their husbands will threaten their wives. If you go back to Bible study, well, we're going to have a big problem. And I mean like a big problem. And so women are scared, or I'm not going to give you any money anymore, and you're not going to have any food if you go to that Bible study again. So we have these problems, and it's really hard. And so now what we're doing is we're going and visiting the families of the kids who are coming to our Bible study to build relationships with our families, because we really, truly want to have entire families come to know Christ. That's what we want. To have individuals is hard. You're disassociated with other people because you don't have any friends because, well, you're going to be a Christian. I'm going to do business with you. I'm not going to buy your stuff. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to do anything with you because you're a Christian. So when there's a family unit, they at least have each other. One of the things that we do also, and again, purposeful in what we do, we could have a children's program where it's like off in the distance where we don't have anybody bothering us, but what fun is that, right? So why not have a children's program where there are chickens and cows running through, not running, but like walking through. And so the other thing that happens is adults come. And they're just standing around the outside and they're just talking, but they're also listening. And so that's one of the things that we want to do is have the adults come around because it gives us opportunities to build relationships with those adults. Hey, how are you doing? How's your cows doing? I heard you lost your cow. Did you find it? You'd be surprised how many people lose their cows there. It's unbelievable. It's often a prayer request. I lost my cow. I can't find it for 3 days now. That's a prayer request we get often. But there was this one woman, her name is Chentai. And Chentai, everybody knows what an inside voice is, right? Okay, well, this woman does not. She has no idea that there's such thing as an inside voice. The only level she has is scream. And so I know most people don't believe me when I say this, but I'm actually an introvert. And so when people come and scream beside me, it drives me crazy. I just feel like, and I'm getting older, and I like peace and quiet. I want to live out in the country. I don't want to live in the chaos of the city. And so Chentai would always come and stand right beside me and scream, talking to her. And I was like, Lord, I can't deal with this woman. She is making me crazy. Can you make her go away? Like, I would pray that God would make her go away, but she would always come. She was at every single program, every one. And it would I couldn't stand it. And I would try to walk away, but she'd come and follow me and come, because she's an extrovert and I'm an introvert and she's killing me. And so she would just come every single time and it would make me crazy. And I would just pray, Lord, this woman is wide open. She is never going to get saved. Please just make her go away. Well, guess who was the first person to get saved in the village? Chentai. God has a sense of humor, and so God actually answered my prayer in the exact opposite of what I ever thought he would do. And Chentai is actually, she is ostracized from her village in some ways. She is family with the witch doctor, and his wife, she's also a witch doctor, so that's part of her family. But we've built a lot of trust in these villages, so it makes it a little bit easier for them. Because these people do like us. It's not like they don't hate us. They just don't want their family becoming Christian. Because who's going to pray them to go to what they think of as heaven? And so Chentai is now going through discipleship. Is she still wide open? Absolutely. Does she have an inside voice? Nope. She still is full on, but she is very, very committed. And so it's just interesting to look back and just see how for a couple of years she just would make me crazy. And now she's one of my favorite people. Wide open still, loud as can be, but one of my favorite people also. Matthew 25:35-40 says, "For I was hungry," and you've all heard this before, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. For I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothed you? When did we see you sick or go to prison and visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of one of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." And that's really the key to making relationships and building relationships and breaking down these walls to be able to reach out to these people. We've never been to prison yet. So far, that's the only one we haven't fulfilled, is going to prison. We know people have gone to jail, but we haven't been to the prisons yet. I'll never forget the moment when I watched a child drink the cow's water. We just started a new program in 2014. It's probably about November or so. And this area was 100% unreached. And when I say 100% unreached, I mean that they have never heard the name of Jesus before, not even heard the name. And if they had, they think that Jesus and Santa Claus are brothers. I know, very random, but that was what they had heard. They also had heard that the Jesus people throw away their parents as they get older. I mean, just some of the craziest, because sometimes they go to nursing homes and they consider that throwing them away. And so anyway, and so we were in the middle of a children's program. The children were singing their praise songs. I was just kind of standing back and taking it all in, looking about what was happening, and just kind of, I like to sit back and observe and just think about, what God is doing and what we can do in our ministry. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this woman walking up with these 2 giant cows. And I mean like giant cows. They're massive. And they walked up just as gentle as can be, and she walked them over to this cistern thing. It's like a big pot about this big, about that tall. It looks like a flower pot, a giant flower pot. And she brought them over there. And I've seen this before. I've seen these things before. I see them all over the place. And it's where they have water. And so she brought the cows over to the water, and they drank the water. And she stood there for a few seconds, and then she walked away. A few minutes later, another woman came with a baby on her hip, walking towards the same water. I thought to myself, surely she is not going to give her baby that water. She reached over for the little red cup with the little handle on it, dipped the water, and gave it to her child. I thought I was going to be sick. I was so upset by what I was watching. Trying not to act like I'm shocked about what I've just seen, I walked over to the water just to look at it myself, and inside was the milky gray water with stuff floating all inside. I knew we had to do something. We couldn't do nothing because God told us I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. Well, how can I give them that water? We have to do something. At the same time, at our church, we go to, my husband and I go to Westside Fellowship directly beside Western High School. A little 9-year-old girl, she was actually in the video. She came to Cambodia later on. A little 9-year-old girl had a heart for giving clean water to people. And so when we had come back to visit one time, she said, I want to do something to help kids in Cambodia. And we're like, hey, well, we can do water filters. They're kind of expensive, but, if you want to raise money for water filters, that would be great. Well, she raised enough money for 110 water filters. I mean, her and her grandmother were making things and selling things, and we were just amazed at how much and how hard she worked in these water filters. And so God gave her that heart for water filters. So what we're going to do real quick, because I do want to take a little break real quick, we're going to watch 2 short videos. One is just going to tell you a little bit about the water filters, and then one is going to show you one of our trips out to the water filter, to give out water filters. More than 20% of all Cambodians do not have access to clean water. With 75% of Cambodians living in the rural countryside, the percentage is much higher. Sickness, dehydration, diarrhea, and even death are the results of the lack of clean water. At Cambodia Village Outreach, we care about those who are suffering and strongly desire to share the love of Jesus by providing clean water, a very basic necessity, to those who are unable to provide it for themselves. As a ministry, we are partnering with local churches and pastors to share the gospel through water filters. Each water filter not only represents a family who will have clean water, but who will also hear a clear presentation of the gospel, most for the first time. Through water filter distribution, a bridge is also built for local pastors to follow up with villagers, again, giving them a chance to share the gospel. You can impact the lives of Cambodians by purchasing a water filter, providing clean water for 2 to 3 years. Not only will you be providing clean water for a family, but you can be making an impact for generations to come. You will be providing opportunities for the gospel to be shared in places that are otherwise unable to be reached. Together, we can evangelize, disciple, and multiply in the most unreached areas of Cambodia. This first person is my husband, just so you know.
opportunity to say thank you so much for your help, for your love, and for your donation.
So those are our water filters that we give out, and that was one of the opportunities. I was actually back in the United States. Our son our son is adopted from China, and he has some medical issues, and so I was back in the States with him, and Domson was out there go on these boats out to these faraway villages, and I was quite jealous. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't be. So originally we had started giving out water filters in what we call our faraway village that I was talking about, where the witch doctor lives and everything, and that was where we met a woman named Get. And Get is probably in her early 30s now. She came to get a water filter, and as we're giving out water filters, we're looking for people that are really interested, like who is paying attention and who's not paying attention at all. As we pray, we're looking for who is like really, you can see the people that it's just like there's a very clear difference. And so we were looking for people that were really interested. And at the end of the presentation, we always give a gospel presentation too, a very clear gospel presentation. And we always ask people, if you would like to accept Christ, either raise your hand or you can pray with us. Well, Get was one of these people who you could tell she prayed with all of her heart. And is it normal for people to really accept Christ on that first time? Not usually. We end up following up with people asking if they have any questions. Because, you're talking about like trying to make me become Buddhist. Yeah, it's not going to happen, right? Like it would be really hard to reach all of us to become Buddhist. Well, it's the same thing for them. In Buddhism, it is within their family. It is ingrained in them from the time they are born. They wear all this protection stuff around their wrists, around their waist, around their necks, all these different ceremonies. Every holiday is a Buddhist holiday. And so it is just ingrained in them. And so we end up following up with a lot of people so that we can see if they are interested, if they have questions, because they do. They always have questions. If they're truly interested, they always have questions. And so we saw that she was very interested in that. She was really she prayed with all of her heart. And so we went to her house later on and was following up with her. And she had a lot of questions about spirits. And so in Cambodia, there's a lot of, it's a Buddhist country, but it's very animistic also, which means that it's a lot of spirit worship and ancestor worship. And so they have even just like these spirit houses. So all these houses have a spirit house on the outside and one on the inside, and they make these sacrifices to these spirits. You go to the witch doctor because one of the spirits is mad at you, and you've got to figure out why the spirit is mad at you and why you're having bad luck and all this other stuff. And so she had a lot of questions about the spirits, and because she wanted to be free. She knew that there was nothing that she could ever do to be free from her sin, to be free from the spirits. And she didn't want to have anything to do with that anymore. So we began discipling her and meeting with her. And she is married. She's got 3 kids, 3 boys, three boys, like rough and tough boys. And so she began discipleship with her. And her husband actually noticed a difference in her. He said to her, "Oh, you must have become a Christian because you've really changed." I was like, what? That's crazy. And so at that point, she began to share with her husband. And he began to have questions. And she was answering them with what she knew. And if she didn't know the answer, she'd come to us and ask us, and then we'd tell her, and then she'd go and tell her husband. And so it was just amazing to see how she was already at being such a young believer. Like a few weeks or maybe a month or so, she was, sharing her own faith. And so her husband ended up becoming Christian too. And so this was really the big transformation point for their family, because now you've got two believers, but they still had these spirit houses inside and outside. And so she said, I want to throw them away. We don't need them anymore. We're not worshiping spirits anymore. I want to throw them away. Now, you got to understand, this is a big deal. Whenever we would rent a house before, we would always tell the landlord, that's got to go. We don't believe in that. We got to get rid of it. It is a big deal. They have to have this big ceremony where they release the spirit. There's no, like, really young kids, are there? Okay. They're, like, releasing the spirit and giving them another spirit house that they can go. I mean, it's just this big deal. And so she said, I want to throw them away. And he said, no, we can't throw them away. We need to burn them. I was like, oh, my goodness. And so they did not a ceremony, but they took them out, put them in the side of their house, and burned them. You know, and just that is such a big deal, such a big step of faith, because most people won't do that. They're scared because there's such, and like I was saying before, like, it is so ingrained in them to be fearful of these spirits. They wear these red string bracelet things that the monks make, and that's to protect them. You'll see them on their cars, you'll see them on their rear view mirrors, or on a moto, around their waist. They wear, I mean, it's all over the place. To get them to cut that is a big deal. You're supposed to let it fall off. If you let it fall off, there's no bad luck. If you cut it, it's bad luck. It's like we believe, like, you know, break a mirror, 7 years of bad luck, or walk under a ladder. You know, it's kind of the same kind of superstitions that they have. And so they ended up burning their spirit houses and all of their Buddhist things, and just completely abandoning their faith and following Christ. And now their kids are growing up in a Christian family. They are part of our ministry now. I wish I could tell you so many more stories. I know we don't have time today. But they are defending their faith. They have been persecuted, and persecution is a real thing. And, you know, it's not from the government. Like, I feel like a lot of countries that have persecution, it comes from the government. A lot of pressure from the government. It's not. It's from their family. It's from their villages. It's from their neighbors. I could definitely say that they are hated within their village at this point. But they don't care, because they have Christ and they have freedom. And it's so funny now, because they're like, I don't understand what's wrong with these people. Don't they want to have freedom? Don't they want to be free from the spirits? Do they really want to keep worshiping? Why can't they accept Jesus? It doesn't make any sense. And they just can't understand why these people don't want freedom like they have. Why would you want to be in prison? Like, if you got to choose between prison and freedom, what would you choose? And it's hard for them to understand why that people wouldn't accept Christ. Now also, they are working within our ministry. Goes and helps with our children's program. And she now goes with us to, when we pass out water filters within the surrounding villages, she goes with us and shares her testimony. Because, you know, as an outsider, I mean, I can share with people, but it can be harder. But as an insider from the village, because even our staff that we have, they're from the city. It's like saying that, like, Brown Summit's a city. It's not. It's like, you know, countryside, right? And so even that's considered, you know, an outsider. But having someone from the village going and sharing their testimony about how God has changed them is just very powerful. And people listen to her. It's amazing. Her husband, you know, has to work during the day, so he's going up onto this mountain thing, breaking rocks and stuff like that. But it's just amazing to see how God is changing her. And she's been part of this transformation of these villages that's happening. 1 Peter 3:15 says, but in your hearts, honor Christ as the Lord is holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. And I think she takes that verse to heart. So many people, earlier I was talking about Gigi, how everybody knows her. Her grandma, who was completely illiterate, also is the same way. She'll sit there. I mean, we talk about, like, redneck. She defines redneck in Cambodia. I mean, like, I have a hard time understanding what she's saying sometimes, because like her accent is so strong, and just her way of living is backwards. But she will defend her faith. She's not going back. One of the strongest Christians I know there. Again, completely illiterate, completely uneducated, but yet has amazing faith. Real quick before, I know we're going to take just a minute or two to answer any questions that y'all have. I just want to share with you some prayer requests that I wanted to share real quick. So first, like I mentioned earlier, my son Bohao and I will be going to Cambodia a week from tomorrow. we flying out. So just a little background about him. Like I mentioned, he was adopted from China. He does have epilepsy. And so last year, he ended up having brain surgery because of his epilepsy, because it had gotten to be so bad. And so we are just praying that God is continuing to take care of him. Even just praying that his medicine comes in on Tuesday, because we can't go without that medicine. So there's just some things that we need to fall in place over this next week before we go. The second thing is currently we are trying to raise funds for our growing children's program. Again, children, they're such a big part of our ministry. They're really like the key to getting into villages, because, kids are our life. And so we're getting ready to add 2 more Cambodian staff, because our ministry is growing. Like in a few weeks, they'll be coming. But we can't do this. We can't continue our ministry the way it's growing without adding staff. So just be praying that people would be interested in partnering with us in our ministry and supporting those who are going and doing the ministry, who are the hands and feet of the people who are going out there and the dirty roads, hot, real hot. Like we have 3 seasons, hot, hotter, and hottest. It is in the hot. We just came out of the hottest. It is in the hotter season now. And then it's going to get hot like in November and December and January. Thank goodness. So just be praying that God will provide the support that we need for that. The third is those who are persecuted in these villages. It can be very hard for them. We have had people leave our ministry because of the persecution, and they've cried in tears in fear, literal fear, not fear, fear for their lives, but just fear of being abused by relatives and family members. We've had children that have had to leave our programs because of the abuse that happens because of coming to our programs. So just be praying that there will be a community of believers. That's one of the things that we have 4 villages in one area of different believers, and we're really trying to build a community among those believers and to start our actual first church. We have like little small house churches, but to have like a community church there. And then the fourth thing is very random. Pray for a new vehicle. We are specifically looking for a Toyota SUV. If you saw the video, you see the roads. They are terrible. We had a little Toyota. It was a 25-year-old Toyota Camry. I mean, we tore that thing up. Like they said, yeah, you got to dump it. You can't fix it. It's just beyond. And so we have a truck that was donated, and we were able to ship it over to Cambodia. It was actually really easy. I was shocked about how easy it was. We're looking for a donated Toyota SUV, an old one, like 2007, 2000. Don't give me a new one, because you got to pay taxes on that, and that is insanity. So we're looking for an old one, or a Honda CR-V. Again, we're looking for very specific things, because those are the kind of cars that can be repaired in Cambodia. If you send me a Dodge and it breaks down, it could be 6 months before we get a part. So that's why we're looking very specifically for those kind of cars. And a car that can withstand the potholes, the dirt, the mud, all of the wear and tear that we're going to do to it. So those are the 4 things. So does anybody have any questions they want to ask real quick before we close? I do have a water filter over here. You're welcome to come and look at it. This is the actual water filter that we just brought one back with us so we can share with people. You can put the nastiest water in there. The only thing it does not kill is arsenic. That is the only thing it doesn't get out. So you can put the nastiest water in there, and it comes out just as clean as can be. And then there's a couple newsletters. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, there's a paper up here. I send out an impact story every month, just a short story about what God's doing in Cambodia. And then a prayer card also is over here too. But does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Yep. What would a mission trip look like is the question. So we work with children, and then we do discipleship. So we'll be coming and doing like a VBS in each of the villages, and really just coming alongside with us. Doing children's programs, leading Bible studies. All this will be translated for you. It would be all translated for you. We would do some water filter distribution. That would depend on where we do it. Would depend on where we're working at that time. Like if there's a particular church, because we do partner with churches now to pass out filters, so that the pastors have opportunities to go out and follow up with people. So we're trying to support different churches. I say local, I mean like 3 hours in the middle of nowhere local, not like in town or anything like that. And then the other thing we do, we look for gifts and talents that people have. So like if you're a teacher and you are good at teaching, if you have teaching strategies, I might get you to teach my children's people about different ways that you can teach. If you're a doctor or a nurse and you want to do some, or a dentist and you want to do some medical work, if you have a medical background, I'm going to use that. So we also want to use people's gifts and talents that they have and incorporate those in any way that we can. And it's usually about 8 to 10 days. We try to plan it. You are not allowed to come in March, April, and May because it is absolutely miserable, just because it is so hot. So January is a great month to come. It is only hot. But it's not that bad. I mean, like 85. I mean, it's not that bad. It's better than 32 here, right? Does anybody else have any other questions? And if you're like me and you're too shy to ask in front of everybody, feel free to ask me anything you want. I'll answer questions about adoption. If you want to know about adoption, I can tell you about that. We're adopting a second child right now. So that's another thing you'd be praying for. So hopefully next year we'll have another child with us, like teenager child, big kid. Yes. So what is the safety like? I actually feel safer in Cambodia than I do here. Like here, I'm afraid of like being, in a massive car accident on the highway. Because like exit 150 right here, is there not constantly a car accident? I mean, all the time, like every day. I'm not afraid of that there. There, I'm more afraid of like someone might pickpocket me, something like that. So I actually feel safer there than I do here, which most people have a hard time believing. And the other thing I tell people is that I'm probably one of the least adventurous people, and nobody believes me when I say this, but I like to stay in one place. Like, I'm fine. Like, I like to go to the mountains and visit the mountains, or I like to go to the beach, but I'm fine with just staying around here and maybe go to Greensboro just to get out of the town for a little bit. But I'm not an adventurous person, and so if I can do this, I'm telling you, you can do this too. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all so much for having me. It is really neat to be back here. I haven't been back here in almost 30 years, told my age. Everything looks the same, pretty much. But thank y'all so much for having me. If you have any questions, please feel free to come up and ask. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much.